With regard to the status of the Speaker, Mr. Malema's testimony demonstrates that he endorses violence and that he expresses extreme hatred for white people. He's a powerful political figure, and this is more reason to hold him to account. This is why this case matters. This is not some nobody. This is the leader of the third biggest party in the country. This is someone who can call a press conference at the snap of his fingers, who's calling for genocide.
We make the submission that with respect, Mr. Reward's evidence must be excluded for the following reasons. The first is that he's the head of policy at the complainants. The second is that on his own testimony, he is responsible for coordinating the campaigns of the complainant. He then plays a second role of being the complainant himself because he deposes to the affidavit of the complaint. He then tells us that he's an activist of the Afrikaner community. That is the quintessential example of what not to do as an expert.
So ultimately what the complainant seeks is a declaratory order that the words sung on those occasions constitute hate speech in terms of Section 10 of the Act, that they constitute unfair discrimination in terms of Section 7 of the Act. There must be an apology and an interdict, and that's against those particular respondents. That there should be a directive requiring respondents to revise its policies and practices to ensure that hate speech and unfair discrimination be combated, and that protests and demonstrations be conducted in a manner that does not purport to endorse hate speech or unfair discrimination as acceptable modes of expression. In other words, the EFF as an organisation should be free to disseminate its political ideas that fall within the ambit of protected speech, but they must be advised by this court that their policies which endorse hate speech and endorse unfair discrimination must be changed.
And then lastly, on the question of the remedies that they seek, if I can find them. Well, the first is obviously this question of contempt. Firstly, we've made the point that there's no evidence to suggest there's any contempt of the order at any point. Secondly, the question of the 500,000. I mean, of course, the SCA judgment binds your lordship. Without a trial dealing specifically with the question of damages, you can't entertain the question. There's been no evidence, albeit in trial, to suggest or justify the 500,000 rands. All we're told is my client wears Gucci, therefore he can afford 500,000 rands.
Yes, well, my point is that given the facts of what's known about Mr. Malema's personal worth and the donations that are on public record of the EFF, it seems obvious that Mr. Malema perjured himself.
Now, the point is this, Your Lordship. If there is going to be a link made by Mr. Prinsloo between the song and the psychological harm, he must be able to make that link. He can't on the one hand say, these young black men attacked me and they were prompted by the song which is sung by Mr. Malema. And then the question is put to him, how do you know they have any political affiliation to Mr. Malema or his party, or that they even know the song? He says, well, then I suppose I don't know. Now, again, we have no evidence of any psychological harm caused by the song itself.
This line that, how could we possibly know what affiliation these people had? My learned friend even goes so far so they weren't wearing EFF regalia. Well, the video that we started off showing shows very much red T-shirts with EFF badges, hats, shirts. This is members of the EFF crowd. If we want to take the view, well, we didn't personally inspect their pockets to see if they had membership cards, it starts to take things to an absurd degree.
These people were unled, Your Lordship. There was no leadership of the EFF leading them in song, nor asked them to come to court for that matter. Mr. Malema could not identify any of them other than the fact that they were wearing EFF T-shirts. That's the difficulty we face, Your Lordship, because we might face the same issue with Senegal. We are accused of being part of rogue elements, when in fact, once you investigate, you find out that what is apparent is actually not the truth. And that's the point, Your Lordship, we're trying to make.